Call the roll, please.
Here.
Here.
Present.
Yes.
Present.
Here. Reverend McDowell, do you
Yes,
mind
sir.
saying a little word of prayer before we
Yes, sir.
embark on this 2-hour journey?
Promise me 2 hours.
That's our goal.
Very good. Let us bow our heads. For your grace and mercy, for all that you've done for us this very day, for the ability to gather around this table to talk about not only economic issues, but issues of the heart, and of course, issues that relate profoundly to our city. Touch us in a way that you might sensitize us to your will and to your way. We ask it, we claim it, in whose name, amen.
Amen.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council.
Good afternoon.
Another work session day. I know you all are just so excited to always come and work with us on these work session days. So much to do. And because of the original schedule we were on, we pivoted a little bit because I know the urgency around the discussion regarding our overall approach to chronic unsheltered homelessness in Columbia, and the path that I know you to be on and what direction you and the staff and me need to take based off your work through the task force to prevent and end homelessness and all that Chairwoman Bustles is doing and her fellow members of the task force, Mr. Brennan and Reverend McDowell. Having met with the task force last week, I was very pleased to hear, from some of the providers that we have funded over the years. And I think they are doing a yeoman's job with some very hard work in our community when to tackle homelessness and the overall issue of homelessness. I do think that this council, based again off what you are directing towards me as the city manager and what is the most urgent need, is this clear focus on the chronically unsheltered population in our community. And so over the course of the last several weeks, and I've laid out for you again, I'm simple. I'm not trying to, be a rocket scientist here with this, so I'm just trying to take exactly what I'm hearing you say and try to fill in the gaps from what our service providers are doing well, but try to help give you an approach that may be a little bit different based off what the city's capacity allows it to do from a funding or resource perspective. Knowing that we're not service providers, city staff, we're not, but we're pretty good at standing up some infrastructure and standing up some needs if clearly defined. And so today, I would like to offer Dr. Bustles to speak to the last task force meeting. And she had asked some specific questions of those providers, and they gave their answers. And then I was going to, based on what you directed me to do, was take what I gleaned from that conversation and where I think we as city staff could perhaps fill in the gaps. And some of that discussion we're going to have to immediately go into executive session to talk about, because it's going to be partially a contractual matter that I would propose if this is something that you're still giving direction on. And it's something that's going to look pretty different to you, something we haven't tried before when it comes to a rapid shelter approach. And I'll explain what that means and give you a presentation on that in executive session. And if there's something you want to come back out and talk publicly about, we can certainly do that. But with that, I'll hand over to Dr. Bustles to talk about the last task force meeting.
Thank you, City Manager Wilson. As you all know, we held our third task force meeting last week on August 17th. This was an opportunity for our 5 city-funded providers. So 3 of them are funded through our general funds. The other receive money through our community development fund as a trickle down from federal HUD funding, to come and share their perspective and their ideas around key issues that have arisen in our discussions. As you all can see in the memo that City Manager Wilson has provided, really our questions were focused on some of the gaps that we've identified after the cataloging of services. Our second meeting was in June, and that was when our consultant provided an overview of the number of different programs that are available in the greater Richland County, and that is around 100 programs. That may mean that certain organizations provide multiple programs, but there is certainly a lot of different things going on in terms of preventing homelessness among different populations. One thing that this task force has been very intentional about wanting to focus on is the unsheltered homeless. CPD estimates that this is approximately 200 to 250 people, with about 50 that are more likely to engage in criminal activity or repeat crimes that CPD has to interact with. We know that homelessness is much larger than that when we think about the different populations that can be homeless, whether it's children, whether it's families. Again, this discussion has continued to be focused on that unsheltered homeless or chronically homeless population. One of the biggest things that the task force identified and asked the providers about was about addressing this population specifically. One of the things that we learned through our conversations is that every organization is focused on a different population, which is great in terms of addressing the depth of the problem, but sometimes not great for coordination and collaboration. And so we asked them for their recommendations for addressing the unsheltered homeless specifically and received some very thoughtful responses. We also asked about how we can better streamline the over 100 programs that are addressing homelessness in the Midlands, as well as where we could get more buy-in from our federal, state, and neighboring governments in terms of streamlining some of these processes. And then we ended with asking them about the biggest challenges that they see in their work, and that was a wide range of things. So I wanted to highlight 5 or 6 key points that really stood out to me and to my colleagues on the task force. First and foremost, there continues to be a need to provide services after 5 p.m. There are not any services available at this time. Some of it is capacity issues, others it's lack of coordination, or it's just simply the way things are funded in terms of being able to provide services after 5. City Manager Wilson had shared with us there was an effort to get a crisis stabilization unit up and going in partnership with DMH. I appreciated that she asked about the updates around that, and we're hoping that that will be up and running soon. This crisis stabilization unit would really serve as the point of contact should there be any issues around homelessness after 5 p.m. because, as we've heard from our business owners, people typically go straight to CPD instead of some of these providers because there really is no path to getting that help after hours. We also learned that in addition to the large coalition of 13 counties that the Midlands Area Coalition of Homelessness serves, the continuum of care dollars in South Carolina are substantially less than other states and is not actually proportional to our homeless population. And one of the major recommendations that the providers had was leveraging our contacts in Washington to help advocate for more funding. If we want to drill that down even further, Richland County receives less money than Lexington and some of our other neighboring entities, although we are the only county that has a low barrier shelter. And so we really need to revisit the ways in which we can ensure that we're getting our fair share of that funding. All of the providers also talked about the city's bus ticket program. They said that it was widely successful in reuniting families, and we should continue to fund that, given that there are a lot of people looking to reconnect with their loved ones and may not have the means to do so. There was also a discussion around the sex offender ban, which is currently an agreement made by the city with the neighborhoods when transitions opened, and this is something that providers urged us to address. For those of you all that are not familiar, sex offenders are not allowed to use services as it relates to transitions or really any other service in the Richland area. There was also an emphasis on considering opening the inclement weather center year-round, given that Transitions still remains to the only shelter that provides, housing and has low barriers compared to some of the other options available. And then finally, I wanted to note Councilman Brennan, I appreciated his question around what the buy-in is of our neighboring entities. And for every service, we asked about what Lexington and Forest Acres and other entities are contributing to our work. And providers noted that Richland County reduced transitions funding by $100K this year. Things that we need to think about is, as we continue to be the city that's known for being compassionate, a city that provides services and ensures people have what they need, we have to have our partners at the table to help us in assisting with some of these services that are frankly quite expensive. And it's important for us to pay our fair share and not be burdened with a lot of our regional neighbors without their buy-in and support. And then last but not least, everyone acknowledged that there is room for better coordination, better alignment, and that perhaps from a city's perspective, continuing to be very clear about our expectations and outcomes is going to be especially important, especially as it comes to this specific population. And so in the short term, that may mean, reorganizing or thinking about how we manage these contracts, looking at best practices in neighboring entities such as Charleston or Winston-Salem or Boston, and focus on getting more housing around the unsheltered homeless. Thank you.
Dr. Bustles, a quick question. You mentioned Richland County had reduced their contribution by $100,000 to what? So what's their current transitions? So what's their current contribution level?
So I believe it was around 200,000 and it was reduced to 100,000. Lexington, and these are ballpark numbers, Colonel Curry shared that Lexington was around 50,000.
And that's what they've consistently done, or is that a reduction as well?
Lexington, I believe, gave a little bit more. In the past, it's been 20 to 30,000. So.
Thank you.
Well, Mayor Rickman, I would recommend at this time, if you all would entertain going into executive session, and I can certainly go into more detail on my recommendations.
Yes, ma'am. Howard, yes, sir.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion we go into executive session for discussion of negotiations instant to propose contractual arrangements pursuant to SC Code 30-4-70A2 homeless services, discussion of the employment of an employee pursuant to SC Code 30-4-70A1 benefits.
We will definitely come back out of executive session, Mayor, and anything you all want to talk about at that time, report out on, or, obviously we have some other budgetary items for the discussion
Get a
today.
second.
Sorry.
Aye.
Aye.
Yes.
Yes.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you for coming downtown.
Thank you. And this is totally unexpected. I come to sit in on your meeting and just to see how y'all work in the great city of Columbia. See if there's anything like we do in Irmo,
Every Tuesday, come on down.
I wouldn't do it every Tuesday, but thank you though. But I wanted to talk to y'all about, I hear y'all talking about the homeless task force, and I appreciate that very much because we have that situation out in Harbison especially, as well as, all over the city. But more importantly, I want to talk to you about Harbison Gardens, the complex over there, the citizens in Irmo, which is contiguous to Harbison Gardens, as you know, and we've talked about it before, Mayor, is having an issue where the kids are just uncontrolled. They're coming across. They're doing violent stuff in the neighborhoods, and it's morphing over into the town of Irmo. We identified that 2 years ago and put together programs where we tried to work with with the residents there, the management, and the police, IPD, and everybody, CPD, all of them to get those kids under control. And we finally put together a program where we actually take the kids, give them some guidance, give them some mentoring, feed them, give them some things to do after school so that they don't run wild, especially during the pandemic when the kids were they were left at home to try to learn and stuff. Well, we're over the pandemic. The kids are still, they're behind now. There needs to be some more intervention. And the the town of Irmo has put almost $100,000 into this education reclamation program. We need the city to help us with this because I'm getting pushback from my citizens, saying, hey, you're spending all this money outside of our district. It's into City of Columbia's district. I've reached out to the merchants in the Harbison business community. I've gotten commitments for $50,000 to fund some of the programs we have out there, but there came with a caveat that the city would match the amount of money that we put forth. I know this is in Tina's district, and I appreciate all of her efforts to try to get us to get that matching money done, but we really need the city to help us with this issue because it's not something that's going to go away. It's something that we have to, work on together to try to get these kids under supervision, under control, if you will, and so we don't have people going over to the mall and hanging out because there's nothing to do. Kids going into the neighborhoods contiguous to them, vandalizing cars and, shooting guns and, getting change out and stuff. There's a whole myriad of things that we can avoid if we work together, but it's going to take some financial support. And like I said, this town of Irmo has already put in, $100,000 to this effort. And we just need to get that matching money that we have committed right now from the city to do it.
Mayor Walker, what kind of funds did you all use, or what was your source of funding?
Well, we have ARPA money we used. There was $100,000 right off the bat. We also have a hospitality tax. I'm sorry, not hospitality tax. We have tax money. We have a number of different, sources that we can pull from. But I know we took the initial $100,000 from the ARPA money because that was part of that, getting back from the pandemic. That's one of the uses for that money, and we were able to allocate that right away. Now, our little town, we only got $5 million from ARPA. I know you guys got, what, $100 million or something like that, or
I wish.
$1 billion?
We got like a third of that.
You got us confused with the school district.
I got you. Okay. My point is this: is that my budget is $8 million a year. That's probably less than what you spend on your sanitation. We have. That's what we were able to scrape that money together to do this because it's that important of an issue. We don't want to just throw these kids into the wolves. I mean, these kids are behind 2 years. Literally 2 years from this as a result of the pandemic. We need to do what we can do to get these kids back on track.
Can you share with us or have delivered to us the overall proposal, but also how many kids were served, et cetera, from the program previously? Obviously, we haven't even voted yet to where we're spending our ARPA money yet. That's coming up in our next couple meetings. So it would be beneficial for us to look at what resources we have to look at, but also understand what the true effect is because, as you know, Capital City, we're dealing with a whole lot of issues as well. So trying to figure out a balance there. But I think if you could share all that information with us and make sure we can get it around the council, we can discuss and look at what could be the options to form a partnership to address the issue.
Well, it's even beyond that, Mayor Rickman. I get what you're saying. You want to see the results of what we have accomplished so far, and I get that because remember now, Harbison has a large business community. They contribute millions of dollars to your A tax, to your hospitality tax, and I don't see a lot of stuff coming back to Harbison area directly from y'all.
What I would tell you that the
I don't
city
s-
of Columbia takes on a lot of load for the Midlands, for
I
a
do.
whole lot of
I-
subjects, including homelessness and other stuff, so.
Yeah, I
But-
heard that in your meeting.
But I
get
do
it.
think that, we want to look and see what's available, but we got to understand how many people are we talking about? How does the program work? If this is a church program or a standalone program.
Right.
Because we got to understand what our funding options could be. We can't commit hospitality tax to that.
I understand.
Unfortunately.
I understand, but ARPA, you certainly could, but I understand that. But listen, what I'm saying is, when I say I have a church that's involved, what I've done is I've reached out to the Harbison Association, the Harbison Group, to the churches, to the apartment complex management, and said, hey, your kids are affecting my neighborhood, my community. And this is outside of my district, but what can we do to grab these kids and get them under control or get them into some kind of a program? So the town of Irmo doesn't have a direct link in doing this programming. The churches do. This particular church did, and they put together this program. In conjunction with that, the Harbison Association, they have facilities available. They're willing to give us facilities where we can take the kids to. They have the gym, they got the pool, they got even a meeting room where they can be mentored. All that stuff's available to us, but it's a matter of putting it all together.
Well, understanding that is what helps us be able to be able to
Right.
find a resource and be able to try to work together to solve the problem.
As well as that the Harbison Garden community, there's over 150 families that are in there that has 200 or 300 kids. They're from the 12-year-old down to the tweens, the 12 to 16-year-olds. There's a whole group of people that we can reach, that we can get in touch with. So when you ask for a number of people that we're serving, they only can serve as 80 people, 80 families, 80 kids.
It's just trying to understand
Right.
what the program entitles,
Yeah.
what the program has been able to affect so far, and how do you continue that, so we know kind of, we have all the background information.
Right. I can get the person that has all that information, Dr. Ross. Keel Ross is the superintendent of the school district. He started the program. Dr. Alonzo Johnson is the church that I'm saying it has took the leadership and kept the program going and mentoring and everything. I can have those people reach out to, I guess, Ms. Wilson, and give her the information. She can disseminate it to the council. Is that appropriate? Okay.
And Mayor Walker, I will say that I did have the chance to have a meeting with Dr. Ross, and it is important to note that he is the superintendent for the school district that has come up with the curriculum. And I learned a lot of things with him, but he's talking about if we could keep certain kids in programs for more hours throughout the day, how we can increase their outcomes. So I think the program really does have a lot of merit. It's just a matter of funding and funding sources, yeah.
I got it.
I mean, we got to have all the material in the proposal. I mean, it's the way the system works. I mean, we have to have all that information so we can disseminate it across and then find the appropriate way
I get
to
you.
contribute.
I get you. Now, this is something that has to happen sooner than later, and I will get that information to y'all. But if we talk about, slow walking this thing until next spring or whatever, that's going to be a problem because these kids, they're there now. They need this help now. And
Total cost of the program is
no. That's what the town of Irmo put into this program. If you're asking for a total cost, if we service every child in Harbison Gardens, that information has to get from Dr. Johnson and Dr. Ross. I don't know what that is.
Will that be a part, Mayor, of what you're asking Mayor Walker to do?
Yeah, I mean, right now, we don't have anything, so we've got to have a proposal, a background, understanding. We got to understand what our portion would be. I know that a single entity is committed to 50,000 if we match 50,000, but understanding what are we matching and where would we get that funding from? Yes, the ARPA funds could be a source, but we collectively haven't even decided how to spend our ARPA, and that's coming in our upcoming meetings over the next several weeks. So the sooner we get the information, and we've kind of talked about this before, and I think even we heard from the school district at one point, but nobody ever followed up with the information. So the sooner we get it, the sooner we can deliberate around it.
I'll make sure that follow-up happens, and that's my commitment to coming here today, and I appreciate y'all letting me come into your workshop. We don't normally do that in Irmo, but I appreciate the fact that you let me come and do that to hear.
Sorry you had to wait.
I don't mind waiting.
Anything I think that is part of development of our kids' lives has a lot to do with not only Irma, but
Right,
with the Midlands, actually.
right.
So you buy into something where you know you're going to get a real investment on. So I certainly appreciate this conversation.
Thank you. And again, I'm not trying to save the world. I'm trying to save Columbia, Harbison, and Irmo. I wish I could save the world. I'm not that good yet, but I just, I want to reach out to that. And I know that's going to take some funds. I know it's going to take some resources. And like I said, we were able to put some resources to jumpstart this program, and I will get the information that you're asking for, to y'all. And I appreciate it very much, you giving me this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Well, you all have just this one city council discussion item left, which is the recap of my revised funding recommendations that we went over with you at our last work session, and Missy will come forward, Missy Kaufman, Budget and Program Management Grants Director, and we will try to work expeditiously to move you all just through the review of the funding items. Jeff also has sent you some very detailed information on how we move the Finley Park funding forward, and we're very excited about doing that now. And so with the issuance of a bond and how that bond will be serviced through the various funding sources as outlined. So we will try to work as quickly as possible. I know you all are tired, so shouldn't take long because it's just a recap.
Thank you, Ms. Wilson. Yes, we are recapping conversations from a couple weeks ago regarding our allocations, city manager recommendations for funding for various general capital fund capital projects, as well as programmatic allocations. Just a reminder about our fund balance. With the many of these allocations are coming from our fund balances from various sources, and then of course and then some funding with regards to the operating budget going forward. So with regards to the capital projects, I have given you an updated schedule. We emailed out on Friday, but then made a few minor edits, mostly with regards to Finley Park, showing some additional allocations to Finley Park based on some funding recommendations that Mr. Palin will bring to you momentarily. We also made additional changes from our discussions from a couple weeks ago regarding our general capital projects. You'll see on this list as well, most significantly was adding $2 million from our general fund allocations for Finley, towards the Finley Park program. And then also just bringing forward to this list the Assembly Street grade separation and quiet zone. They're listed here because in order for us as we move forward, and I'll talk about next steps, so that we know what the allocations will be coming from our general fund. We have also made recommendations for CV as our Congaree Vista funds. The next column for the H-tax or all those special revenues, hospitality, accommodations, and so forth. Primarily, those are all allocations from our hospitality tax funds, but there have been some discussions of other allocations of the other sources. So the Finley Park is reflected there of 3.5. And then grants, for the purposes here, this is primarily on the capital projects list, is an allocation that we are recommendation from our American Rescue Plan funds towards the, towards two specific projects for city fire stations and police facilities. So that's the general capital projects list. I'll go ahead and get to the point where what the next steps will actually be is that for city council to act on these funds, we'll bring you a budget amendment that will include these allocations, and so that will be on, we'll target the September 6th city council meeting. You'll have a budget amendment that will reflect these allocations.
And I would hope that at that time, we will really push out for the public's edification, and I know they're just as thankful as we are that we'll be able to move Finley Park forward in the way that we're doing that. I don't know if you want to speak to that now, Jeff,
And then the remaining allocations are for more programmatic allocations. I have made some adjustments based on our prior conversations. I've split out municipal court from the facility renovations and then the additional for the judicial restructure. We've also reflected some allocation for the homeless coordinator for the general fund, but still leaving to be determined some allocations from grants. Of course, anything that's to be determined will not be on your budget ordinance, but those things that are specifically to be adjusted in the budget amendment. And then remaining from there, if there's no other conversations or questions, we can move straight on into the Finley Park proposed funding.
Question on this particular slide. Those are what, you're recommending that we fund that? Or
Yes, sir.
On the Office of Gun Violence Prevention, we haven't had any discussion of that.
so, right, so we would have today, but because of the nature of and urgency of the homelessness discussion, those items on the back of your agenda to include the Office of Gun Violence Prevention, the Amplify Columbia, which is the cultural affairs proposal, all of those things would need to be discussed on Tuesday if y'all are meeting Tuesday. Yes, sir.
So we can hold on any of these items that you're stating that we hold from the agenda.
I think the purpose for us to have these, the work session, the next work session, so we can go through all this and address all these, and that's
And then
the
your
purpose
budget
why I was
amendment.
saying we really need the extra time to deal with all this, because it's a lot of stuff still to go through and finalize, because there may be some tweaking to this that, everybody may want to make some adjustments.
Right, and it would give us one more week to make any adjustments before your budget amendment would come forth on the 6th of September.
One of my concerns is the use of the H-tax. We have not finished the allocation from this year. We reserved some, but we funded the agencies at last year's amount so that we would have some to reserve for future allocation. But we need to go back and finish up the,
Howard, you need to talk in the microphone. People keep texting me, they can't hear you.
oh, okay, good. I'm concerned about the H-tax. I don't want to spend it all until we have gone back through the allocations for this year's request. And we didn't complete that process when we went through it the first time.
I will point out the allocations recommended for these different projects from hospitality is from the fund balance. There are still funds reserved in the current H-tax budget that are not yet allocated, that are intended for the remaining conversations.
Missy, what's the balance on the H-tax account?
After today, or, yeah, going
Please don't
forward?
answer that question.
Yeah, I need an answer.
You gotta go to the mic.
Gotta be louder, Erica.
Just, we're gonna use the number that's in here, right?
Who's gonna talk, either Missy or?
So Jeff is going to be speaking specifically to the recommendations we have for funding Finley Park, which includes hospitality tax allocations.
That's why I can't get a balance then, right?
So right now, we are targeting about a $5 million fund
All right.
balance.
Okay.
Yeah, any other questions about these projects?
Yeah, we're
Otherwise,
gonna do it again next week.
Yeah,
any other questions?
not today.
Okay.
Well, you certainly answered my question, and my question was a fund balance. And of course, you've already said,
Mr. McDowell, please.
I'm sorry,
Talk to the
$5 million, and that's a good answer.
Yeah, that,
But
well,
that, and of course, what that simply says to me is that there needs to be more conversation that we could perhaps have next week.
so let's be
Getting ready to
clear on
spend
that
that.
$5 million
We're getting ready to
then.
spend it. Yeah.
So it's 4,900,000 and change. However, that's all spent on these sheets that you're looking at. So it's not $5 million more dollars to use outside of what we're discussing today unless y'all want to totally change everything. So I don't want anyone walking out of here thinking there's $5 million more dollars to spend based upon what Missy has shown over 2 weeks and then what we're about to talk about for Finley Park. So when we spoke 2 weeks ago about Finley Park, we were asked to come back utilizing cash up front and issuing a bond to get this done on a short-term loan. So total cost for the project, this is the total budget for Finley Park, $21,500,000. We spent $1.5 million this past fiscal year out of hospitality tax. Henry and his staff, Parks and Rec, have been going through that process this year. In addition to that, I see the order, somehow that changed. We also have been allocated from the state of South Carolina $1 million towards the project. And then we're also recommending that we spend money out of our general fund to the tune of $2 million. You've heard us talk occasionally about the Congaree Vista project account. We're recommending taking $3 million out of that and spending it on Finley Park, and then out of the H-Tax cash, $3.5 million. That will leave a balance of $10,500,000. So I sent y'all some information Thursday that had a little bit smaller numbers in there. I received some feedback over the weekend, though, and staff would agree. Can we spend more cash, have a shorter term note, and let's get this project moving? So this is what I'm showing you today, is the 10.5 million. How do we, we would issue a bond in this spring for the 10.5 million. It doesn't mean we would be holding up on the project. The project can start as soon as y'all give the word for us to move forward. We can start that. When we issue the bond, what we're looking at is just a 5-year loan on this.
This is the right way to do it, not a bad deal, not at all. Yeah, you lose
The
it.
10.5
That's why I
million
asked
is
for that.
cash that we're putting in, but that leaves another 10.5 to be,
Well, we're putting 8.5 million more. We had already spent $1.5 million, and we're getting $1 million from the state. So then we'll spend another 8.5 between hospitality tax, the general fund, and the Congaree Vista. So we're bringing a lot of allowable resources that can be used for this project.
And issue the 10.5, issue a
Then we'll issue
shorter
a bond for 10.5
10.5.
million for the balance of
that's the
that.
same figure you have up in the cash. Balance, issued debt. So that's not a total there. That's the remainder, okay. Okay, all right, got you.
Track down and that leaves you a balance.
Right.
So we'll issue a bond for 10.5 million.
I think, Jeff, excellent work out there. Thank you, sir.
Okay.
That's why
If y'all are good, then I'm not gonna say another word.
Let me tell you, I would just have to concur with Councilman McDowell. That's a proper way to do a maintenance CapEx project and a short-term 5-year deal, and I tell you, outstanding job on that.
What kind of debt you gonna issue?
Oh, come now. You know we're going to issue your favorite. So I've actually spoken with our financial advisor and our bond counsel. So we're looking at an installment revenue purchase bond, or installment purchase revenue bond, IPRB. That gives us the ability to use multiple funding sources, which is what we're using on here for repayment over the next 5 years. For that, it also gives us a better the credit's going to be better than utilizing one of the other simple sources, so we'll get a better interest rate. Granted, it's a 5-year bond. Odds are it'll be a tax-exempt bond.
So we're looking at, I think in the numbers, we're estimating around maybe it's under 3% is the interest cost.
That's what you should be using. I agree.
Okay, excellent. I hope Brent Robertson is watching and heard you say that.
I just want, for the media in the room, I just, again, congratulations to the staff on this thing, because too many times government folks defer this stuff, and you see 30-year bonds for maintenance CapEx. We see it at dormitories all the time, at government schools, and this is a very disciplined way that lets you plan out for 5 years that, again, this is an excellent way to do this.
Good job.
We hadn't done it this way before, and I appreciate what you've done.
No, sir, we usually, our others have been 20 and 30 years.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Yep.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Missy. Did you all have any other slides? Are we good? That completes the recap, so thank y'all so much, council. The additional items were referenced earlier, and they're on the back of your agenda that we'll continue to discuss. And see you on next Tuesday, the 30th. Erica, that was decided earlier that council would meet from 3 to 5 on August 30th.
Knock this out.
Okay, very
Now,
nice.
this is what
All
we're
of
going
them next week.
we're, Howard, just.
So
point of
prepare
clarif-
yourself for the meeting.
Just a point of clarification. What we're gonna do next Tuesday is to do what we got on the back sheet.
Yes, sir.
It's on the
Any,
back
yeah,
of this.
yeah, I got it.
Yeah.
Anything else?
I mean, if something stems out of that we need to address, but this thing is try to finish those different.
And I know, I'm sorry, Mayor, Mr. Brennan had requested we add the fire services contract. You know, I originally had that as its own work session. That's a little bit of a
It
beast.
actually needs to be
but
separated out.
I think he's pretty anxious to maybe just have I'll talk to him, maybe just some overview comments. So we'll see, exactly what he wanted to address immediately. Take-home car program, okay.
Mr. Mayor, you and I have talked about this, and I think everybody around the table had caveat to a proposal by Bishop Eric Davis. We've had conversations with Bishop Davis and, of course, with the mayor. That's going to.
That follows under our ARPA money discussion.
That's correct. Just wanted to make sure we had that, the proposal was on the table. All of us have it, but have not talked about it. So the mayor has been in conversation, or will be in conversation pursuant to those funds, talking about those funds.
And you all are just gonna bring that up under either that or
No.
community promotions?
At some point, don't you think, Mr. Mayor?
It will be brought up because it would fall under one of those two
Okay.
categories for discussion.
Okay.
Thank you.
I just want to be clear, I wasn't gonna break it out on the agenda because I don't break out any funding requests from specific
No, ma'am,
entities.
it's
Okay.
part of the general discussion of that.
Okay,
Yes,
sounds
ma'am.
good.
And I would liken that to maybe the one with Mayor Walker and
Yep.
us just really determining what kind of fund, if any, that we'll have, in the process for all
Assuming
of
we've
them.
received the information.
Right, and I think it kind of goes to too, like the format that we're receiving information. I know that Richland County has a formal process that they have where people have to answer their questions, and so we may want to look at having a formal process so that folks, similar to what we do with everything else with our grants,
Yes, ma'am.
CDBG.
And,
That's what's on the community promotions.
Yeah.
right,
Yeah.
that notice of funding availability, we'll seek some direction from you all next Tuesday as well on, to your point, Councilwoman, what that would look like if you do that. Well, thank y'all so much.
Thank
Motion to
you.
adjourn.
Did you adjourn?
Good meeting.
I second it.
A non-debatable motion to adjourn.